Hi, I'm so pleased to be here again with another interview from one of the contributors to a new anthology published by InScribe Press called Creativity and Chaos, Artistic Endeavors for Trying Times. Super excited. The anthology will be coming out in September. And today I have one of the contributors, Nina Morey. Hi, Nina. So you're actually involved in you're part of the publishing team, I guess you could say. You're one of the editors
Mhm.
and things.
Yeah, yeah. I was the managing editor, but I had a good team with me. So, yeah, I think it was like 8 or 9 people. So that was good.
Yes, but it's a lot of work, of course, whenever one puts together any kind of anthology.
Yes, yes. It was a lot of work. I hadn't done something like that before. So I put a magazine together because I used to edit Fellow Script or InScribe magazine. But it's the first time actually putting a book together. So it was quite a learning curve for me. But that's one of the reasons I wanted to do it. So.
Oh, wow. Well, and I'm sure you've done a great job. Of course, I haven't seen the paperback finished copy in my hands yet.
I have it right here.
Oh, how exciting. Well, this is the first time we've actually seen a copy of it on one of these interviews, so that's really
Mhm.
cool. I have to say, I love the cover. It's so vibrant. Um, it's one of the things that people have commented on how nice the cover is.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, we had lots of choices to choose from, but that was the consensus we arrived at. So, yeah, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out.
Oh, as you should be, because I do know that there's so much work that goes on behind the scenes for sure.
Mhm.
So, let's talk a little bit today about about the pieces that you actually have in the anthology. Actually have three pieces. You've got two nonfiction and a poem.
Right. Hmm.
So let's start with the nonfiction. So, one of them is called Cancer, Chaos, and Creativity, and then the other one is called After Grief, Recreating Life from the Ashes. I mean, both of them, just from the titles, sound like two very traumatic events that took place in your life, which then, of course, you were inspired to write these
Hmm.
pieces. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about either or both. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, cancer, chaos, and creativity. I was diagnosed with breast cancer back in, well, actually, probably the end of 2010, beginning of 2011. And I went through I went through about a year of treatment. It was like surgery and the chemotherapy and the radiation, and so that was quite an ordeal. But I've survived this long, touch wood. So I think I'm in the clear now. But you never know with cancer.
Yeah. Actually, I remember those days. I think it was when we first met, actually, face to face, was at a conference in maybe 2011 or something like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think you were just going through that whole process at that time.
Hmm.
Um,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a grueling process, and since I've joined InScribe, I found so many of the my fellow writers have also gone through some form of cancer. A lot of them breast cancer, but lots of forms of cancer. So it's very prevalent. It seems like in society today. So I'm by far not the only one. So it was nice to communicate with other people who had that experience as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And so in terms, as you say, like it's very, very common, unfortunately so. But what about the creativity piece? Because I'm so glad that you are a cancer survivor. We know one another. And of course, that's such a chaotic time emotionally and physically. But what about the creativity part of that journey?
Yes. Well, when I was first diagnosed, I kind of dropped everything and I wasn't really doing too much. But then eventually I found out that that was kind of an outlet for me for some of my emotions and I was feeling. So I went back, I started doing some journaling, which I hadn't done for years. So I picked that up again and doing some Bible study along with some journaling and scriptures that were speaking to me at the time. And I wrote a few pieces about it in my journal, like just sketching out pieces. And I kind of took a lot of that and put it into my story, Cancer, Chaos, and Creativity. And I talked about how that whole process came about because I think a lot of the times I find, not just myself, but a lot of the writers I talk to, there's a lot of people who kind of use that for therapy when they're going through some crisis or chaotic experiences in their lives. And that's kind of where the idea for the creativity and chaos come in, and also coming out of the pandemic as well.
Hmm.
And then I had lost my husband just in April 30th of 2020, just when the pandemic was starting. So that's kind of what led me into the story about after grief,
Mhm.
recreating life from the ashes. And I talked in that one about the whole experience, like just the realization that kind of hit me when I left the emergency room that night, that after about 50 years with this man, I was all by myself now. Of course, I have my children, but it's not like having a partner in your life. And how to kind of eventually came to thinking about, how am I going to live now? What kind of a life is ahead of me? How do I kind of pick up the pieces and put it back together when half of them are missing?
Mhm.
And that's kind of what that story came out of.
Well, I have to say, like, what a challenging time to go through that. I mean, obviously, losing your, any loved one, but certainly your life's partner would be, I think, the ultimate, challenge. But right then during COVID as well, like, how did
Yeah.
you cope? Because you weren't really able to get maybe the support that you might normally have had.
Yeah, it was kind of an isolating time for a lot of people. And then, most people would have their partners or somebody. So it wasn't quite so isolating. But when you don't have somebody, I still have my son that's in the same city with me. So I saw him a lot, and my daughter would come and visit. But, uh, it's just not the same as having somebody every day when you wake up or go to bed with, or it kind of to emphasize the isolation, I guess, of that whole period.
Yeah, wow. And I mean, in both cases, um, the writing, I guess, writing about it is, as you said, kind of therapeutic. I find that as I've been talking to various authors, in this process, that so often that's the case. They've used their creative gifts,
Mm.
or writing specifically to sort of um, be able to move forward from some of these difficult times.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's why just talking to some of the other members and stuff, that's kind of where the genesis of the idea for the anthology came about, because I knew that there were lots of writers in our organization that had gone through a lot of traumatic, whether it be cancer or uh, other means of death or illness or what have you, that had been dealing with a lot of things. And I know from just talking to them or from reading their previous writing that it played a part in their writing. So yeah, that's
Mhm.
kind of part of the reason what we thought of this anthology.
Yeah, yeah, and it's brilliant. I mean, as you say, that, so a lot of times our best work comes out of, well, we're sharing those things, and other people are able to relate and maybe find hope,
Mhm.
and healing through
Mhm.
hearing about other people's experiences, like you.
Right. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. So you also have a poem. I'm always impressed by poets because I don't really write poetry, so it's like, oh, poetry. Oh, lovely.
Yeah,
But
kind
so,
of the first thing I
yeah.
started out doing when I was writing, the first thing I wrote was poetry,
Mm.
uh, and short stories to some extent. But I kind of started out with poetry.
Yeah, well, I mean, poetry is such a deep emotional art form, I guess, if you will, or I think it is. So tell us about that. It's called A Desert Apathia. Did I get that right?
Mhm. Yes, apathia, apathia. Yes. I've kind of always been fascinated by the monastic life, and I had read a number of pieces about the desert fathers, who I think primarily lived in the Egyptian desert, about third century AD, I believe. And there were desert monks. There was also some nuns, and so that gave rise to desert monasticism, and that kind of had a lot of influence on the Christian monasticism. I think came out of that hermit lifestyle that they lived, where they kind of focused on sacrifice and stillness and silence and prayer. And they emphasized living and practicing the teachings of Jesus. They did a lot of immersing themselves in the scriptures for spiritual growth and sanctification. So there's one quote I had from one of the Desert Fathers that kind of led into the poem. It's I don't know which Desert Father it was. I think it was kind of anonymous, but it's take care to be silent, empty your mind, attend to your meditation in the fear of God, whether you're resting or at work. If you do this, you will not fear the attacks of the demons. And that kind of led me into writing that poem, A Desert Apatheia, which
Mm,
apatheia means freedom from your passions and emotions.
mm, mm. Wow. I guess that's where we get the word apathy, but I
Mm-hmm.
feel like apathy is a much more positive, uh, has a more positive connotation to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so like that, okay, well, that's really cool. And how does that relate to the anthology, that whole idea of the creativity and chaos aspect?
Yeah, it talked about them like they were trying to get away from a lot of persecution at the time that was going on, and they kind of did a lot of isolation there, a lot of Bible study, writing, that sort of thing. So it kind of really related to, I thought, what the topic of the anthology was.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Oh, that's so cool. So you had mentioned at the top of the interview that you have done other editorial work, and that is very true. You were editor in chief of Fellowscript magazine for a number of years, and you're still on the editorial staff. Um,
Yes. I
yes,
started out as columns editor, then I went to editor in chief, and now I've been back at doing columns editor for the last couple of years.
yeah. So you have a lot of experience in that regard in terms of editing and
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. So that's kind of cool. What other like writing do you do? How's
Well, I've had quite a bit of uh, my short stories and just essays and poetry and stuff published over the years.
Mhm.
I probably didn't really start seriously doing that till I was in my early 50s. So it's kind of a thing after I retired, and then I went back to work for a little while. So I didn't do too much for a few years there. But yeah, it's something that I kind of picked up because I always enjoyed writing when I was younger. But when you're raising a family and whatnot, you don't have that much time to do it. So, like I said, I first got back in by writing poetry, and I wrote some poetry, and I had some of it published in magazines or literary journals, and then just gradually kind of snowballed from there. And I did a lot of for different magazines like Gray News, Prairie Messenger, the Canadian Messenger, uh, and just kind of had a. I did quite a few for a few years there. I haven't done too much recently except for Fellowscript
Yeah.
and the anthologies. I've had work published in four, I believe, of the other anthologies: Easter Stories and More, Christmas Stories and More, 7 Essential Habits of Christian Writers. So yeah.
Your CV is pretty long.
Yeah. Yeah, when I applied for the Barnabas Award, you had to put in a CV, and it was kind of enlightening. Oh, wow, I've done more than I thought I had when you
Yeah.
start putting it all down on a piece of paper, that's for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, so speaking of that, you have won some awards in that regard. Hey, the Barnabas Award being one.
Yeah, I joined InScribe in 2014. So in 2015, I had to submit an application for it, and not really expecting to win, but I thought, well, might as well try. It'll be a good experience. You don't win if you don't try. So
Yes.
I also submitted some pieces that I had written that year. I think it was personal essay category, I believe it was, or nonfiction. And I won a couple of awards for that too at the same time. So it was quite a good year.
Yes, yes. Oh, wow. Well, that congratulations, of course.
Mhm, thank you.
Yeah, and you're very busy also. You are on the InScribe executive currently. That's
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I'm director at large on there. So that's how I ended up kind of picking up the anthology because I had talked about actually, I think the year before when we were doing, I believe it was Easter stories and more. I had volunteered to kind of co-chair or whatever you want to call that with Ruth Snyder, but that's when my husband got ill. So then I kind of dropped out of everything. So
Yeah,
for a little while there.
yeah, yeah.
So I thought, well, okay, now's my chance to try it again. So
And it's keeping you out of trouble.
yes, yes, very much so. It's a lot
Yeah.
of work, probably more than I really expected. But like I said, I had lots of help. So
Oh, that's yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, yeah, well, is so anything else you want to talk about today? I'm just about out of questions.
well, I just want to say that we've got a lot of talented writers in InScribe, and I had many, many submissions. I actually extended the submission deadline.
Mhm.
It wasn't for lack of submissions, but there's a few you have to just like kind of pick and choose. So I extended the deadline for a bit, but there was some that I wish I could have included, but because I had a page limit, obviously, so I couldn't actually publish them all.
Yeah.
But there were so many that I could have published, especially poems. I got a lot of poetry. I was surprised. I didn't realize we had so many poetry writers.
Yes, yes. And just as a little side note for anyone who's wondering, I mean, there was a selection committee and all of the selections were submissions, sorry, were anonymous. So it's not like Nina was like, yeah, I'm gonna get all mine in there. It was an anonymous process and
yeah,
a
yeah,
committee decision.
yeah.
So
The committee didn't get to see who the submitters were.
no, exactly, exactly.
hmm
So that's kind of a cool thing about it, that we encourage, people to submit, but it is really quite fair in that regard because you
Right.
know
Yeah.
who.
Just like all our contests and everything, it's very done very fairly.
Yes, yes.
No favoritism.
Exactly, exactly. Well, this has been lovely. I look forward to seeing you hopefully again soon at Fall Conference coming up at the
Yes, I think we'll see each other at the fall conference this year. That's in Calgary. I'm looking forward to it. It's our 24th anniversary of InScribe. So we're going to have a little special gala and everything, and it's the book launch for our anthology. So I think it'll be a fantastic time.
Yes, yes, the 25th anniversary. Yes, that's right.
25th.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, probably misspoke.
Oh, that's
25th.
okay. But yeah, of being inscribed, but the roots go back even farther than that, which is kind of cool. So yeah.
Yeah, almost twice as long, I think.
Yeah. So I'm really
Yeah.
looking forward to that too. Well, it was so nice to talk to you, Nina. And yeah, God bless. We'll speak again, I'm sure.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the interview, Tracy. And I've had a chance to watch a few of the others, and they're really good. I really enjoyed them.
Oh, good.